Before the battle, before the maps were redrawn, before names were carved into stone and memory, Europe was loud and quiet at the same time. Kings argued in warm halls, farmers argued with the weather, priests argued with each other, merchants argued over prices that changed every week, and most people, the kind history rarely remembers, just tried to get through the day without trouble. From the outside, Europe looked powerful, grand even. Big empires stretched their arms across the continent. Flags flew from towers. Armies marched in neat lines during parades. It all looked stable, like a heavy table that had stood in the same place for generations. But if you looked closer, that table was wobbling. Political tension was everywhere. It just didn't shout yet. It whispered. In the West, old kingdoms watched their neighbors with careful eyes. In the East, empires pushed and pulled at borders that refused to stay still. To the north and south, rulers signed treaties with one hand while sharpening knives with the other. Alliances existed, yes, but they were fragile things, more promise than truth. Most of these alliances were built on fear, not friendship. Fear of losing land, fear of losing power, fear of being remembered as the ruler who let everything fall apart. And fear, as history loves to show, is a very busy emotion. Religion added another layer to the tension. Faith was not just belief, it was identity. It decided who you married, who you trusted, and who you were supposed to hate. Differences that started as words in books slowly turned into lines in the dirt, lines that people were willing to defend with their lives. Meanwhile, empires were growing tired. Large empires always do. They stretched far, ruled many peoples, spoke many languages. Keeping them together took constant effort. Taxes rose, laws tightened, rebellions sparked and were put down, then sparked again. Power was everywhere, but peace was thin. Yet for the average person, life went on. In a small village, a baker woke before sunrise. He worried about flour, not borders. A mother packed food for her children and hoped they would be home before dark. A student memorized prayers and dreams of something more. Somewhere else, a soldier polished armor that would soon matter more than he knew. Markets opened, bells rang, rivers carried boats and rumors downstream. Seasons changed like they always had. No one wakes up thinking today feels like the beginning of the end. That's the strange thing about history. It never announces itself politely. Across Europe, rulers met in chambers thick with smoke and silence. They spoke in careful language, words like balance, security, and necessary action. These words sound calm, they sound reasonable, but behind them were threats, deadlines, and plans written in invisible ink. Borders were not just lines on maps, they were wounds that never fully healed. Every empire had a story about land it once owned. Every kingdom believed it deserved a little more, or at least wanted to make sure someone else didn't take it first. And then there was pride. Pride in armies, pride in banners, pride in being right. When pride meets fear, things move faster than expected. Slowly, very slowly, the continent leaned toward conflict. Not all at once, not dramatically, more like a long sigh that never quite ends. Each small dispute made the next one easier. Each compromise left someone angry. Each show of strength demanded a response. And still, people laughed. They celebrated weddings. They complained about taxes. They told stories by firelight. Someone somewhere probably joked that Europe always looks like it's about to fall apart and never quite does. History smiled quietly at that joke, because beneath the calm surface, pieces were sliding into place. Decisions made in distant capitals would soon reach fields and towns that never heard the names of the men making them. One battlefield was being chosen not by fate, but by a series of very human choices. Choices that felt small at the time, reasonable even. Each one pushed the continent a little closer to a single day that would echo for centuries. No trumpets yet, no drums, just tension waiting. Europe did not know it was standing at the edge of a turning point. It rarely does. The world before the battle always feels normal while it's happening. Only later does it earn a name. And somewhere ahead, just one day waited quietly. One field, one clash, one moment that would change everything. If you walked through Europe before the battle, you wouldn't see history happening. You'd see people living. Most of them were common folk, farmers, craftsmen, servants, apprentices, people whose days were ruled by sunlight, seasons, and sore backs. A farmer woke up thinking about rain, not borders. Too much rain ruined crops. Too little meant hunger. War was something distant, loud, dangerous, and usually someone else's problem, until it wasn't. Farmers worked land they rarely owned. Many paid rent to nobles who barely remembered their names. Still, they planted, they harvested, they hoped. That rhythm had stayed the same for generations. Empires could rise and fall, but wheat still needed to be in the ground by spring. Village life was simple but not easy. News traveled slowly and usually arrived twisted. A rumor could change shape 5 times before reaching the next town. By then, it sounded scarier or funnier, sometimes both. Soldiers lived a different kind of life. Some were professionals, many were not. A lot of them were farmers who traded plows for spears when called. They trained just enough to not drop their weapons, maybe. They marched long distances for reasons they didn't understand, following banners they trusted more than the men carrying them. Soldier life was mostly waiting, waiting to be paid, waiting to move, waiting to fight, and joking, because joking made the waiting easier. Dark humor thrived in camps. If you couldn't laugh at the risk of dying, you'd go quiet, and quiet was worse. Not all soldiers wanted glory. Most wanted survival, and food, preferably warm. Then there were the nobles. Noble life looked comfortable from the outside. Big houses, soft clothes, long meals. But power came with pressure. Nobles were expected to lead, to provide troops, to protect land, and to look confident even when they weren't. A noble's day might include managing estates, settling disputes, and writing letters full of polite threats. They married for alliances, not love. They raised sons to inherit titles and daughters to strengthen ties. Every decision felt personal and political at the same time. Above them all were kings and rulers. Their lives were filled with meetings, advisors, and maps covered in lines. They spoke of people in numbers, troops, taxes, territory, not because they were cruel, but because distance makes things abstract. Across all levels of society, religion shaped daily life. Faith was not optional. It marked time, explained suffering, and told people who they were. Church bells didn't just call people to pray, they structured the day. Morning, noon, evening, life moved to that sound. But religion also divided. Different beliefs meant different loyalties. Trust could vanish quickly if someone prayed the wrong way. Arguments over faith blended into arguments over power until no one remembered where one ended and the other began. Economics added fuel to everything. Trade routes made cities rich and made others jealous. Control of ports, rivers, and roads meant money. Money meant armies. Armies meant influence. A blocked route or raised tax could hurt thousands without a single sword being drawn. Dynasties complicated things further. Europe was full of families who had ruled for centuries and wanted to keep it that way. Bloodlines mattered. Claims to thrones passed through marriages, deaths, and paperwork older than most cities. Sometimes a single inheritance could threaten peace across half the continent. One ruler dies, another claims the crown, someone else disagrees, armies begin packing. All of this made peace fragile. Peace existed, yes, but it was held together by promises that expired quickly. Treaties were written with escape routes built in. Everyone planned for peace while preparing for war. It was like neighbors smiling at each other while quietly checking the locks. And the thing about fragile peace is this: it doesn't break all at once. It cracks, slowly, quietly. One incident here, one insult there, one defensive move that looks very offensive from the other side. People sensed it. They didn't say it out loud, but they felt it. Prices crept up, taxes rose, soldiers passed through towns more often, sermons became sharper, jokes became darker. Still, life went on. Children played, crops grew, letters were written, and somewhere between the routines and the rituals, Europe moved closer to the edge. Not because everyone wanted war, but because no one could stop it anymore.
Before the armies met, the commanders already had, not in person, in reputation. Across Europe, two rival leaders were spoken about in careful tones, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to carry respect, doubt, and a bit of fear. These were not mythical heroes. They were human men, tired men, intelligent men, men who had learned how to hide worry behind calm faces. Let's begin with the first. He was born into privilege, but not comfort. His childhood was full of expectation, tutors instead of toys, lessons instead of freedom. He learned to read maps before he learned how to relax. His family believed leadership was not a gift, but a duty, and duties were heavy. As a child, he watched adults argue over land and honor. He saw how a single word could change a room. He learned early that power was quiet when it was real. Loud voices were often a sign of weakness. That lesson stayed with him. He grew into a careful man, thoughtful, controlled. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, people leaned in, not because he shouted, but because he didn't need to. Ambition lived inside him, but it wore clean clothes. He didn't dream of chaos or glory. He wanted order, stability, a world that made sense on paper, even if it didn't always behave that way in real life. Faith guided him, not loudly, not dramatically. It was private, steady, a compass, not a weapon. He believed he was doing what was right, and that belief gave him strength. It also made him stubborn. Now the other commander. His childhood was louder. He grew up surrounded by stories of battles and bravery. His family valued action, speed, courage. Mistakes were forgiven if they were bold. He learned early that hesitation could be deadly. Better to move and fix things later. He trained hard, harder than most, not because he had to, but because he wanted to be better, stronger, faster. He enjoyed competition. Winning mattered to him. Losing stayed with him longer than he liked. He laughed easily and argued often. People found him charming or exhausting, sometimes both in the same conversation. He inspired loyalty through presence. When he entered a room, you noticed. When he left, it felt quieter. His ambition was open, clear. He wanted to be remembered. He wanted his name to last longer than his lifetime, and he believed, truly believed, that he was meant for something larger than ordinary rule. Faith shaped him too, but differently. For him, belief was fire, something to defend, something worth fighting for. It gave his decisions urgency, and sometimes recklessness. Both men rose through ranks, not just because of birth or luck, but because others trusted them. Soldiers followed the first because they felt protected. Soldiers followed the second because they felt unstoppable. And both men felt pride. Not the loud kind, not the foolish kind, the quiet kind that settles deep and whispers, "I cannot fail." That whisper is dangerous. As war approached, the burden of leadership grew heavier. Decisions multiplied. Every choice mattered. Move troops here, delay there. Trust this ally, doubt that one. Sleep became shorter, silence became longer. Neither man wanted to be the one remembered for hesitation. They read reports late into the night, numbers, distances, supplies. Each page carried lives between its lines, thousands of them. But distance turns lives into ink. It has to. Otherwise, no one could lead at all. Still, the weight was there. They thought of home, of families, of the legacy they would leave behind. History is unforgiving, and leaders know it. You are either wise or weak, brave or reckless. There is rarely room for human. Before the war, they prayed, in different ways, with different words, but for the same thing, certainty. They believed in their cause, they believed in themselves, and they believed the other man was wrong. That belief pushed them forward more than any order ever could. On the surface, everything was calm. Plans were finalized, messages sent, faces steady. But beneath that calm, pressure built, the kind that doesn't explode, the kind that tightens, the kind that makes a single day feel inevitable. Neither commander knew exactly how history would judge him. No one ever does. But both felt the same quiet truth. Once this began, there would be no turning back. And somewhere between confidence and doubt, between faith and pride, the path to battle was set. Not by fate, not by chance, but by men carrying the silent weight of command.
Before the clash, the soldiers were already walking, not into battle yet, but into history. Europe stirred quietly with movement. From hills and villages, banners rose, drums beat a steady rhythm, and boots hit dirt roads that had seen generations pass by. Mobilizing an army back then wasn't simple. It wasn't like sending a calendar invite and expecting people to show up. Men had to leave homes, gather weapons, pack supplies. Horses had to be fed, wagons repaired, and messengers sent to keep everyone on the same page. And somehow, the people in charge expected it all to work perfectly, which, of course, it rarely did. Marches were long, tiresome, sometimes comical in ways the generals wouldn't admit. Soldiers walked miles on sore feet, feet that soon looked like they had their own postal system. Boots fell apart, socks disappeared, blisters multiplied, yet everyone kept moving, forward, always forward. Along the way there were campfires, not just for warmth, but for stories, music, and occasionally bad jokes. A soldier might sing off-key, another would argue about whose turn it was to fetch water, and someone always found a stick to poke at the fire. It was dangerous, exhausting, and strangely comforting. Letters went home whenever possible. Some were short, "I'm fine," "Food is okay," "Don't worry." Some were longer, full of hopes and fears, written by candlelight, folded neatly, and sent with riders who prayed the message wouldn't get lost, stolen, or eaten by a dog. Families waited anxiously. Sometimes weeks passed without news. Sometimes the letter arrived too late. But the act of writing kept soldiers human, connected to the lives they had temporarily left behind. Emotion was everywhere, even in the quietest moments. A young man gripping a spear for the first time thought of his little brother. A seasoned fighter adjusted a helmet, trying to ignore the tremble in his hands. Soldiers laughed, teased, and swore to keep each other alive, knowing full well that not everyone would make it. And the veterans? They carried more than weapons. They carried memories, wounds, loss, regrets. They knew this march wasn't ordinary. Something felt different. The rumors they heard weren't just about who would win. They were about what was at stake. Entire regions, families, futures, everything seemed to hang on this one confrontation. The general sensed it too. Reports came in faster than usual. Scouts spoke of unusual troop movements. Spies whispered about new strategies, strange formations, and innovations that hadn't been seen in recent campaigns. Something about this battle would not be typical. It might not decide more than a border. It might decide the fate of Europe itself. Soldiers noticed subtle signs as well. They saw tension in officers' eyes, even when orders were calm. They noticed the extra drills, the sudden inspections, the whispers among the cooks and wagon drivers. All of it built a quiet expectation. This fight would be unlike others. Marches were also full of small rituals that grounded men. A shared meal, a song, a prayer. Some scratched their names into trees along the way. Others wrote poems in dirt. Little acts of defiance, humor, or memory helped soldiers keep their humanity, because in the middle of long days, when exhaustion hit, humor and small traditions were stronger than armor. Camps became temporary cities. Fires smoked, tents flapped, horses neighed. Soldiers traded stories, shared letters, and argued over maps. It was chaos in miniature, yet it was orderly enough to prepare for the coming storm. Commanders walked among them, watching, noting, sometimes smiling at jokes only they understood. Discipline mingled with the everyday life of men far from home. And through it all, Europe watched quietly. Villages noticed the long columns passing. Merchants counted the wagons. Children waved to men whose faces they would never remember. Life continued, but with a shadow stretching over it. The march itself was a signal. Something large, inevitable, and historically important was approaching. Some soldiers whispered about glory, some about survival, some about home. They all carried uncertainty, but there was also a strange sense of pride to be part of something bigger, to be remembered in stories, or at least in letters that would be read decades later. Every step forward built tension. Each day on the road made the coming clash feel closer. The wind carried dust and rumors. The forests carried the echoes of boots and hooves. The rivers reflected long lines of tents and banners. Europe wasn't yet at war, but it was shifting. Even the animals seemed to sense it. Horses were restless. Dogs whined at the strange smells of campfires and marching feet. Birds took off in flocks, startled by movement they couldn't understand. Nature itself seemed to whisper, "Something is coming." And so the armies moved, slowly, tirelessly, with all the hope, fear, and humor they could carry, through mud and sun, over hills and rivers, along paths that had seen centuries pass. Every march was a prelude, every campfire a quiet moment before the storm, every letter home a reminder that behind every soldier was a story, a family, a life. The emotional weight of these men was enormous, though mostly invisible. They carried armor, weapons, and rations, but they also carried hope, pride, and doubt. And as the days passed, something changed. The air in Europe began to feel charged, not loud, not obvious, but different, the kind of difference that only people who have walked long roads and seen long marches can feel. Early signs suggested this confrontation would be unlike any other, not just because of numbers or strategy, but because of hearts and minds. Soldiers who usually marched without thinking now felt history pressing on their shoulders. Officers who usually gave orders mechanically now paused, aware that the decisions they made could echo for centuries. By the time the armies reached their appointed fields, Europe itself had been marching alongside them, quietly, unknowingly, towards a day that would be remembered forever. Because sometimes, before the storm, the world doesn't scream, it just moves, slowly, tirelessly, waiting. And that waiting had almost reached its end.
The night stretched long and low over the battlefield. Not a single sword had been drawn. Not yet, but tension hung thicker than any fog. Soldiers settled into campfires and tents, trying to catch a few hours of sleep before the day that would change everything. Some knelt in the soft grass, hands pressed together, eyes closed. Others stared at the sky, letting the stars speak when words felt useless. They prayed, not always in words anyone else would understand. Sometimes it was a traditional prayer. Sometimes it was more like muttering, "Please let me make it through tomorrow without falling on my face," or worse. A little humor, even in fear, helped the heart. Letters were being written by candlelight or torch, folded carefully, sealed with wax, or tucked into pockets. Some were short and practical. "I am fine. Eat well. Don't worry." Some were longer, full of stories, confessions, or promises. Men wrote of dreams they had and of loved ones waiting at home. Writing slowed time, made fear manageable. Each stroke of ink was a small act of control in a world that felt about to tip over. The stars above were the quietest audience. They didn't judge, they didn't cheer. They just hung there, blinking in the dark. Soldiers imagined stories in their patterns, old heroes, victories, defeats. Some whispered to each other about constellations, sharing small human jokes. One young man pointed at a star and muttered, "That one's probably already dead, but at least it looks calm." His friends snorted, trying to hide it from the nearby officer. Meanwhile, commanders were awake in their own way. Maps spread across tables or stretched on the ground. Candles flickered. Pens scratched notes. Advisors whispered ideas that were carefully weighed, debated, and sometimes ignored. Decisions were being made, some small, some enormous. Every choice could ripple across thousands of lives. Commanders walked slowly among the tents, quietly inspecting, speaking in hushed tones. They carried a heavy burden. Pride, duty, hope, fear, they carried it all. Yet they rarely showed it. A calm expression was the armor they wore even when uncertainty gnawed at their minds. They whispered instructions and strategies that would matter in moments, hoping nothing had been overlooked. Soldiers listened to distant discussions without hearing much. They had their own worries. Was the food enough? Was my armor right? Did I train enough to survive? Every heartbeat carried hope and fear at the same time, and the quiet night made those feelings sharper because there was nothing else to distract them. Some men walked, alone. They traced the perimeter of the camp, feeling the soft earth beneath their boots. They thought of home, of their mothers, fathers, siblings, wives, and children. Sometimes the memory brought a smile, sometimes a lump in the throat. They held it in. A soldier's pride is stubborn like that. Others lay on the ground, counting stars instead of sheep. They imagined stories of past heroes or concocted plans for what they would do if tomorrow went wrong. Humor bubbled up in quiet whispers. "If I survive this, I'm never sleeping outdoors again. Ever." A few laughed softly, careful not to wake the nearby guard. Resignation settled in like a blanket. Some soldiers had accepted what might come. Others hoped desperately it would not. And some teetered between the two. Human emotions are messy, and this night was messy in all directions. Across the field, horses shifted in their stalls or tied to wagons. The animals sensed tension too. Their hooves stamped, tails flicked, and ears twitched. Even they were witnesses to the quiet anxiety that had taken over the human world. Time crawled. Midnight became 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock became 2. The night seemed endless, and yet dawn was inching closer. Every sound felt amplified, the crackle of fire, the rustle of tents, the soft murmur of a letter being read aloud. The field was alive with quiet activity. Commanders reviewed final plans. They traced lines with fingers, imagined troop movements, double-checked strategies. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Every decision hung in the air, heavier than the cool night. They understood the cost of mistakes. A wrong move could mean lives lost, lives they would carry on their conscience forever. Some commanders walked alone after finishing their notes, staring at the sky. Even men who spent their lives studying maps found solace in constellations. One whispered quietly to himself, "May we all see the sun rise tomorrow." It wasn't a prayer, not really, but it was close enough. Below them, the soldiers whispered and moved, managed fires, wrote letters, shared small jokes, and tried to sleep. Above, stars watched. Above, the moon sailed slowly across the sky. Nature remained calm and indifferent, yet somehow attentive, a silent witness to all that was unfolding. Fear mingled with hope, resignation mingled with resolve, and slowly, inexorably, night began to give way to the first hints of dawn. The long dark was not over, but change was coming. The quiet would soon break. And in that silence, in those soft hours, the soldiers and commanders alike learned something important. Courage is often quiet, hope is often fragile, and the night before history is heavier than the day itself. Because when the sun rises, there will be no hiding from what comes next. Dawn had barely stretched its fingers across the field when the first signals appeared. Not loud, not dramatic, just subtle flags, horns, and a few hurried shouts that rolled across the grass. The air smelled of dew, horse, and anticipation. A gentle wind carried everything, words, commands, and the faint nervous laughter of men trying to stay calm. Soldiers stirred, boots shuffled in the soft morning mud. Armor clinked as belts were adjusted and spears gripped more tightly. Horses shifted, stamping their hooves. Somewhere a dog barked. Somewhere else a bird flew low over the field, apparently unsure why humans were suddenly acting like this was a good idea. Nature observed, unimpressed. The first movements were almost elegant. Columns of men shifted, banners rose, and drums beat a slow rhythm. At first, it looked like a rehearsal. Soldiers followed orders with practiced precision. It was almost peaceful. Almost. Then smoke appeared on the horizon. Not black thick smoke, but thin curls that hinted at fire, maybe friction, maybe just someone burning a campfire too close to dry grass. Whatever it was, the haze blurred vision and made lines less clear. Commands shouted in the open air began to feel like whispers. Confusion crept in quietly. Not everyone heard the same order. Not every signal was visible to all. Flags waved in different directions, and horns sometimes overlapped, each sounding a bit off-key. Men paused, glanced to neighbors, muttered under their breath, and tried to figure out what was happening. Discipline mattered more than ever. Soldiers leaned on training, on habit, on sheer stubbornness. They moved as best as they could, forming ranks and adjusting formations. Officers ran along lines, waving arms, shouting instructions, and occasionally swearing softly when a whole platoon misread a simple command. Plans that had been studied for weeks, practiced with care, began to unravel almost immediately. A misread signal here, a hesitant step there, a horse spooked by a sudden sound. The best-laid strategies didn't survive long under the pressure of real feet, real breath, real fear. And yet, amidst confusion, moments of human comedy appeared. A soldier tripped over a wagon, swore under his breath, and got back up without missing a beat. Another dropped a helmet, only to have a friend kick it back with a grin. In the chaos, small acts of humor reminded men that they were still alive, and at least alive enough to joke. Sounds filled the air. Not screams, not crashing steel, but the noise of movement, leather rubbing against leather, horses snorting, drums beating, horns blaring, and the low murmur of men trying to follow orders. The field became a symphony of tension, each note uncertain, each rhythm fragile. Smoke rolled across, sometimes hiding a formation, sometimes exposing a weak spot. The night stretched long and low over the battlefield. Not a single sword had been drawn. Not yet, but tension hung thicker than any fog. Soldiers settled into campfires and tents, trying to catch a few hours of sleep before the day that would change everything. Some knelt in the soft grass, hands pressed together, eyes closed. Others stared at the sky, letting the stars speak when words felt useless. They prayed, not always in words anyone else would understand. Sometimes it was a traditional prayer. Sometimes it was more like muttering, "Please let me make it through tomorrow without falling on my face," or worse. A little humor, even in fear, helped the heart. Letters were being written by candlelight or torch, folded carefully, sealed with wax, or tucked into pockets. Some were short and practical. "I'm fine. Eat well. Don't worry." Some were longer, full of stories, confessions, or promises. Men wrote of dreams they had and of loved ones waiting at home. Writing slowed time, made fear manageable. Each stroke of ink was a small act of control in a world that felt about to tip over. The stars above were the quietest audience. They didn't judge, they didn't cheer. They just hung there, blinking in the dark. Soldiers imagined stories in their patterns, old heroes, victories, defeats. Some whispered to each other about constellations, sharing small human jokes. One young man pointed at a star and muttered, "Are made of moments. Not all are loud, not all are remembered, but some change everything." On that fateful day, the field was full of small choices. A commander deciding to shift troops left, a soldier hesitating for a heartbeat, a messenger running the wrong direction. Each seemed minor at the time, but together they stacked up like dominoes, and when one fell, it could topple dozens more. Take the first key decision. A commander looked at the field, at hills, streams, and enemy lines, and chose a path others might have ignored. Some officers questioned him, some grumbled, muttering, "This will end badly." Yet he trusted his gut. That choice, quiet as it seemed, opened a gap, or closed one depending on perspective, that changed the rhythm of the entire battle. Meanwhile, small acts of bravery bubbled up everywhere. A young soldier charged ahead to save a comrade. An archer held position far longer than he had any right to. Horses ran in perfect lines, responding to their riders' subtle signals. These moments weren't planned, they couldn't be, and yet they mattered. 1 second of courage here, one quick decision there, rippled across hundreds of men. Mistakes, of course, happened too. Orders misheard, units misaligned, timing miscalculated. Sometimes these mistakes led to disaster. Sometimes, strangely, they led to opportunity. A misfired cannon scared enemy horses. A misstep in formation forced a unit into a better position. History often prefers mistakes dressed as chance, and that day, chance was generous and cruel in almost equal measure. Unexpected shifts emerged constantly. A smoke plume from a fire diverted attention. A sudden gust of wind made flags unreadable. A rider fell off his horse at exactly the wrong or right moment. These shifts didn't appear dramatic at first, but they forced humans to adapt. Every adaptation became a tiny pivot point in the larger story unfolding across the field. Decisions layered upon decisions. Some were deliberate, others instinctive. A captain might glance at a ridge and realize his line was vulnerable. A soldier might see an opening and charge, completely unscripted. Each choice had consequences, some small, some enormous, and no one could predict which would matter most. Commanders had to think fast, but not all thinking helped. Pride interfered, overconfidence whispered, fear lingered in pauses. Choosing when to attack, when to hold, when to redirect men, it was like juggling knives while blindfolded. Every motion had the potential to injure or to save, and somehow humans managed, some better than others. And that's how chance worked, not as fate, not as destiny, but as randomness brushing against careful planning. A gust of wind, a stray horse, a moment's hesitation, tiny accidents that reshaped everything. Soldiers felt it in their bones. The field was alive with possibilities. Nothing was certain, yet every second mattered. Small moments magnified across the battlefield. A soldier shouting directions reached the wrong ear. A messenger tripped over a route, changing timing by just a few heartbeats. That few heartbeats mattered more than anyone could see. Orders changed, positions shifted. What seemed chaotic was actually a delicate, fragile dance of humans and chance. Bravery didn't always mean heroics. Sometimes it was simply holding a line while everyone else wavered. Sometimes it was standing still long enough to let others regroup. Sometimes it was improvising when all plans fell apart. And sometimes sheer stubbornness created opportunities that no plan could predict. Meanwhile, mistakes continued to surprise. Units that should have held ground faltered. Horses slipped. Weapons jammed. Signals were misread, but in chaos, new openings appeared. Opportunities emerged where none were supposed to exist. Soldiers adapted, laughed nervously at misfortune, and kept moving. Humor, even quiet, helped carry the day. The interplay between decision, chance, and action shaped history in real time. One decision by a commander could be rendered meaningless by a gust of wind or a misfired arrow. One mistake by a soldier could create a brilliant moment of advantage. Every heartbeat mattered. Every glance mattered. Every misstep or quick reaction mattered. And humans noticed. Eyes scanned the field, constantly reading. Soldiers watched comrades. Officers watched units. Commanders watched the horizon. Even in chaos, patterns emerged. Decisions had consequences, sometimes immediate, sometimes only visible in hindsight. Some moments would be remembered in letters, stories, and maps. Others would be lost, quietly influencing outcomes without fanfare. By the end of the day, it was clear the battle was shaped not just by grand plans, but by tiny, unpredictable human-scale events. Small acts of courage, brief mistakes, quick decisions, and plain luck had combined to create something bigger than any individual could control. History, after all, isn't just the story of kings and generals. It's the story of the little moments, the human impulses, the tiny shifts that ripple outward. On this field, every choice mattered, every hesitation mattered, every spark of bravery mattered, and the outcome, once distant and uncertain, slowly became clear. In the end, the day proved one truth. Even in carefully studied strategy, chance has a voice, and sometimes that voice sings louder than orders, maps, or plans. And so, as soldiers caught their breath, commanders scratched newts, and the field settled into uneasy rhythm, the story of this battle and of Europe was quietly rewritten, one small moment at a time. The day had been long. Hours of movement, shouting, smoke, and dust had stretched over the field like a living thing. Men were tired, horses were tired, commanders were tired, and yet the decisive moment, the one everyone had been marching towards, was quietly approaching. It began without fanfare. No dramatic trumpet blared, no sky cracked open, just small shifts, almost imperceptible. A line faltered, a group hesitated, a messenger gave a single order, calm but urgent, and like that, the balance tipped. On one side, movement grew chaotic. Soldiers stumbled over uneven ground, commands overlapped. Some tried to fill gaps that weren't there, others followed orders that had already been changed. Confusion spread faster than anyone could speak. Pride, discipline, and courage, normally strong, strained under the weight of reality. Yet even in the collapse, there were moments of bravery. A handful of men held ground longer than anyone expected. They shouted, waved, and charged when it mattered most, buying time for others. Sometimes courage is quiet, sometimes it's noisy. In that instance, it was both. On the other side, momentum surged. Lines that had been steady now flowed like water. Soldiers moved with a mix of training, instinct, and adrenaline. They pressed forward, taking advantage of hesitation. Horses charged with confidence, riders shouting encouragement. Small successes cascaded, turning into something larger than a single man could manage. Triumph has a funny way of spreading, slow at first, then unstoppable. The realization spread across the battlefield like a shadow. One side understood. This wasn't going as planned. Orders would no longer fix it. Discipline mattered less than quick thinking. Soldiers who believed they could hold the line now pivoted between fight, flight, and survival. And yet it wasn't panic, not entirely. Some still joked quietly to keep spirits up. One soldier tripped over a horse and muttered, "Well, at least I'm making history." Others shook their heads, laughed, then dove back into the chaos. Humor is strange that way. It survives even when everything else collapses. Commanders from both sides felt the change immediately. Calm faces gave way to sharp eyes, hands gripping maps and reins tighter. Decisions became instinctive. Orders were shouted, retracted, and shouted again. Even the most careful strategies unraveled under the push and pull of human error, courage, and chance. And through it all, the field kept its quiet watch. Dust rose, smoke drifted, and sun glanced off metal armor and weapons. Nature observed indifferent, yet present. The same hills, streams, and trees that had been passive backdrop now seemed alive with tension. Even the wind seemed to pause, carrying whispers of uncertainty across the battlefield. Collapse and triumph aren't always simultaneous, but on this day, they felt almost synchronized. One side staggered under pressure, units disbanded, lines broke, flags fell. On the other side, confidence grew. Momentum, once small, expanded into something undeniable. Triumph spread like a wave, carried by every step, shout, and heartbeat. As the battle's direction became clear, a quiet realization touched the soldiers who could notice it. This wasn't just a fight for land or pride. This was history being rewritten right under their boots. Europe's future, the borders, the rulers, the alliances, were shifting in real time. They were both actors and witnesses, though mostly unaware of how monumental the moment would feel later. Even small acts mattered. A soldier moving a fallen comrade out of the way, a messenger carrying urgent orders through the chaos, a horse that bolted at the right moment. Each tiny action contributed to the larger picture. History often hinges on these micro moments, though no one alive can fully appreciate it while it's happening. The collapse of one side created unexpected opportunities. The triumph of the other side became undeniable. The field, full of dust, smoke, and human emotion, seemed almost to hold its breath. For a moment, everything paused. Men caught their feet, horses waited, commanders considered their next move. Then momentum carried all forward again, faster and more decisively than before.
The battle was over, not with a fanfare or a loud cheer, but with a quiet, almost awkward pause. Men stopped running, shouting, and swinging swords. Horses breathed heavily, ears flicking at empty air. The sun hung low, casting long shadows across the field, as if stretching out to measure everything that had just happened. Survivors moved slowly. Some leaned on each other, others collapsed where they stood, unsure whether to laugh, cry, or just breathe. Exhaustion weighed heavier than armor. Disbelief lingered like smoke, curling around faces, catching in hair and settling into the posture of every man who had survived. Many stared blankly at the ground, trying to make sense of chaos now turned into silence. The cost of victory and defeat was immediate and visible, though no one counted it yet. Men carried wounds, armor dented and torn, weapons battered, boots caked in mud. Some clutched letters they had meant to send home earlier, now scribbled with urgent, shaking hands. Others looked around, realizing that friends and comrades were gone, some never to return. Even the lucky ones felt the weight of absence. Victors moved cautiously. Triumph did not erase fatigue or grief. They celebrated quietly, a nod here, a whispered cheer there, or simply the satisfaction of standing while others fell. Victory was real, but it came with a strange emptiness. Survival always does. You win, but you pay. You lose, but the memory lasts longer. Defeated soldiers shuffled, some hiding their shame behind stoic faces, others openly weeping or muttering curses at the sun, the field, or fate itself. Pride had been tested, and the world had quietly noted who had stumbled. Yet, even in defeat, courage lingered. Those who had held lines, made desperate charges, or shielded comrades had earned something invisible but lasting. Amid all this, nature began reclaiming the quiet. Grass, trampled and flattened, slowly stood upright in patches. Streams that had been churned by hooves and wheels reflected the late sun calmly. Trees swayed gently in the breeze, seemingly indifferent to human struggle. Birds returned, circling overhead, chirping as if nothing had happened. The wind carried dust and whispers across the field, erasing some memories while preserving others. Exhaustion shaped movement. Soldiers walked like ghosts through mud and debris. Some stumbled over the remnants of tents, wagon wheels, and broken weapons. Others paused at small victories, finding a comrade alive, spotting a familiar banner, or retrieving a dropped letter. Each moment, small and human, mattered as much as any action from the day before. Commanders moved among the survivors. Faces were calm, but heavy with thought. They inspected lines, checked supplies, and noted the unexpected outcomes of decisions made hours before. Even when victorious, they felt the weight of responsibility. Every lost life, every misstep, every unexpected twist lingered in their minds. Triumph was never free. It was always borrowed from someone else's effort, courage, or luck. Survivors shared quiet stories. They spoke in low tones about what they had seen, what they had done, and what had happened to those beside them. Some joked nervously about the mud, the chaos, or the smoke, trying to bring back a bit of normalcy. Humor, even tiny, helped them remember they were still alive, still human. Letters were rewritten, packed, and sent home whenever possible. Soldiers described what little they could. Not glory, not heroisms, but the strange, intimate details of a day that had been both ordinary and extraordinary. Families reading them later would feel pride, fear, and relief all at once. The field itself began to breathe again. Footfalls slowed, dust settled, fires smoldered or went out. Nature's quiet returned, gentle but firm. Streams reflected light, birds sang, and the wind teased banners and leaves as if trying to restore balance. Even in human absence or exhaustion, the earth carried on, witness to the enormity that had passed. Some soldiers stayed in place longer than necessary, staring at the field, imagining what had occurred and what would be remembered. Others helped the wounded or carried the dead to safer spots, quietly tending to needs that history might forget. Every act, small or large, left an imprint that mattered only in the moment. Even as men moved on, Europe itself began to feel different. Borders were still lines on maps, but the people who drew them and the soldiers who fought for them had changed. Alliances would be reconsidered, loyalties reassessed, treaties renegotiated. The battlefield had quietly rewritten the future in ways that only time would fully reveal. By evening, the field was calm. Survivors rested, fires glowed weakly. Commanders reviewed notes, records, and maps. Nature reclaimed spaces humans had occupied. Trees whispered, rivers reflected the late sun, grass grew over footprints, though not fast enough to erase memory. And the world, patient as ever, continued to move forward. Silence became the dominant sound. Not empty, not dead, but reflective. It carried stories, mistakes, bravery, exhaustion, and triumph all at once. Men who had survived understood that silence now held more meaning than any shout, drum, or horn could. And in that quiet, one truth lingered. Every battle ends, but the consequences do not. Europe had changed, slowly, subtly, and irrevocably. The field would heal. Men would return to homes, towns, and routines. But the memory of that day, of human courage, error, and resilience, would ripple across time, whispered in letters, stories, and the rustle of leaves. Nature would reclaim the battlefield, yes, but history would never forget it. The battlefield was calm now, but Europe was anything but. News of what had happened spread slowly at first, then like wildfire. Couriers galloped along roads, messengers whispered in courts, and rumors traveled faster than any armies ever could. A single day on a field had set off shockwaves that reached kings, nobles, and common people alike. The first shock was political. Alliances that seemed solid crumbled overnight. Treaties, carefully negotiated over months or years, now felt fragile and almost laughable. Some rulers cursed quietly, others tore up maps or chewed on quills. No one liked being reminded that a single battle could undo decades of planning. Empires reeled. Some lost territory before they even realized it. Borders shifted, sometimes slightly, sometimes drastically. Maps in royal halls became messy affairs, corrected with new ink, shaky hands, and the occasional muttered curse. Princes and generals alike began reassessing everything they had taken for granted. Power, it seemed, was less permanent than anyone wanted to admit. New powers emerged quickly. States and regions that had been quiet players suddenly found themselves with influence they hadn't expected. Leaders who had been cautious, almost invisible, now received letters, ambassadors, and gifts. Suddenly, people who had been on the sidelines were part of history, their names whispered in courts and written into treaties. The ripple effect was complex. Treaties were renegotiated. Promises that once seemed unbreakable were reconsidered. Marriages planned for alliances were questioned. Diplomats scurried between capitals, carrying news, negotiating terms, and trying to contain the fallout. Some succeeded, some failed, and some just learned to smile and nod while quietly panicking. Borders were redrawn. Sometimes a river now marked the edge of a kingdom. Sometimes a mountain ridge became a new line of defense. Maps became living documents, changing in real time as rulers debated, armies repositioned, and populations adjusted. Europe had become a puzzle with moving pieces, and no one held the solution for long. Rulers responded in different ways. Some struck boldly, taking advantage of weakness, seizing territory, making alliances, or negotiating terms that once seemed impossible. Others retreated into cautious diplomacy, drafting letters that balanced apology, threat, and flattery. And a few, realizing that they had miscalculated entirely, sat in silence, sipping wine, hoping the problem would somehow fix itself. Spoiler, it rarely did. Courts buzzed with conversation. Advisors whispered, nobles plotted, and scribes filled pages with news and instructions. Every day brought a fresh set of challenges. Alliances were fragile, rumors were rampant, and one misstep could spark a new conflict or prevent one entirely. The pace was exhausting, even for those who had never set foot on a battlefield. The ripple effect reached even smaller players. Merchants, towns, and villages noticed changes in trade, taxes, and security. News of victories and defeats influenced markets. Goods were redirected. Roads that had been safe became dangerous. Even distant farmers felt the subtle shift of power in the form of new levies or unexpected soldiers passing through. Everyone, in some way, was touched by the events of that single day. Some rulers acted boldly. They seized opportunities created by weakness, taking territory, making alliances.
The armies had marched, fought, and returned, or at least some of them did. Veterans came home slowly, dusty, tired, and forever changed. They walked roads they had once known, but everything felt different. Houses looked smaller, fields looked wider, and familiar faces somehow carried an extra weight. Families waited, some anxiously, some in quiet hope, and some just assuming the worst. Children ran to meet fathers who looked older than they remembered. Mothers tried to smile while secretly holding back tears. Siblings stared at brothers who had been away months, wondering how someone could survive so much and still be the same person. But of course, no one really came back the same. Some veterans returned with stories, not the heroic kind you read in books, more like small, strange human stories. "I tripped over a cannon," one would say, "and somehow it scared the enemy." Or, "I spent 3 days with nothing but rain and mud for company." People laughed because humor helps make sense of terrible things. It's easier to smile at absurdity than to cry at loss. Loss was everywhere too. Families discovered empty beds, letters that never arrived, and friends who never came back. Grief and relief existed side by side, often in the same room. One corner held laughter, another corner held tears. Life was messy, human, and very real. The economic impact was immediate. Farms had fewer hands to work the fields. Shops had fewer customers. Roads were crowded with returning soldiers, wagons full of supplies, and displaced animals. Markets adjusted slowly. Prices fluctuated, and trade shifted to accommodate the new reality. Every town, village, and city felt the ripple of what had happened on the battlefield. Jobs changed. Some veterans took up farming again, their muscles stronger, but their hearts heavier. Others became guards, messengers, or merchants.
The skills learned in battle found strange new uses in civilian life. A man who once led a cavalry charge might now lead a cart full of grain down a crowded market street. Leadership remained, but the battlefield had been replaced by something quieter, yet just as complicated. Social structures shifted as well. Nobles reassessed loyalty and authority, sometimes granting lands or favors to veterans, sometimes trying to suppress memories of who had been brave or foolish. Communities adapted, learning to accommodate those who had survived and those who hadn't. Respect and fear coexisted, as did admiration and jealousy. Life went on, but subtly the world had changed. Children learned from these veterans too. They listened to stories of courage, mistakes, and the absurdity of chaos. Lessons weren't always clear. Sometimes the point was hidden in humor, like, "Don't drop your spear in a muddy ditch," or "Never trust a horse with attitude." These stories, small and human, carried history forward in ways books never could. Women also adapted. They managed farms, households, and businesses while men were away. Some gained unexpected authority, learned skills previously denied to them, and carried a quiet power back into daily life. Their contributions, often unnoticed by official histories, shaped the recovery and growth of communities. Letters continued to arrive even weeks after the battle. Some were messages from friends, others from soldiers finally able to write home. Each letter told a story, small but real, bridging the gap between the battlefield and daily life. Families read them aloud, laughed, cried, and sometimes shook their heads at the absurdity of it all. Even the landscape reflected change. Roads once trampled by marching feet slowly healed. Fields that had been campsites returned to crops. Forests grew back where tents and wagons had stood. Nature, patient as ever, reclaimed its spaces, but the humans moving through that landscape had been changed forever. Their hearts, memories, and relationships carried marks that no grass, river, or tree could erase. Small towns experienced celebrations, quietly or noisily. Returning soldiers brought new ideas, songs, and habits. Stories of the battlefield, exaggerated or understated, spread across communities. Markets thrived as commerce restarted. Schools and churches absorbed the returning youth, some of whom had grown older in spirit than in body. Daily life resumed, but with a subtle awareness of the fragility of peace. The emotional landscape was just as complex as the physical one. Men who had seen chaos now found comfort in routine. Families learned patience with hearts that were quieter, cautious, or more easily startled. Laughter returned slowly, sometimes interrupted by a flashback or memory. Everyday life had changed subtly but forever by the presence of history in people's lives. Even humor found its way into recovery. A veteran might joke about sleeping outdoors again or complain about how soft beds felt. Children teased returning uncles about their scars or muddy boots. Small moments like these reminded everyone that life goes on, even after the most extraordinary events. And so the war ended not just on the battlefield, but in homes, streets, and fields across Europe. History, which had seemed distant to everyday people, touched their lives directly. It altered routines, reshaped families, shifted economies, and quietly rewrote expectations. Every meal, every handshake, every market day carried the echoes of battles fought far away. Veterans and civilians alike adjusted. Life, messy and human, continued, but the presence of history, its weight, its lessons, its absurdities remained. Every laugh, tear, and memory tied ordinary people to extraordinary events, reminding them that the past is never truly gone, and the everyday is always touched by the ripple of what came before. Europe had moved forward, slowly, unevenly, and sometimes painfully, but its people had survived. They had adapted, and they would remember in small ways that even in ordinary days, history had a way of leaving its mark. The battle was over, but its influence was just beginning. Wars don't end neatly. They leave lessons, scars, and ideas that echo far beyond the field. This one in particular reshaped how Europe thought about fighting, leadership, and even faith. Military minds studied the field long after the dust had settled. Commanders pored over maps, noting what worked and what didn't. Positions that had held, strategies that failed, and moments of improvisation all became examples for future leaders. Soldiers' courage and mistakes were analyzed alike. Every charge, retreat, and hesitation had a lesson buried inside it. Tactics changed. The way armies moved, coordinated, and even communicated bore the fingerprints of this battle. Columns were reorganized, formations were reconsidered, cavalry charges were timed differently, artillery placement was reconsidered entirely. Generals in other lands read letters about the engagement and nodded thoughtfully, or shook their heads at errors they swore they would never repeat. Small innovations had big consequences. Scouts, for example, became more valued. Signals, flags, and messengers were redesigned to avoid the confusion that had cost so many lives. Training adjusted to reflect the reality of a battlefield where one mistake could undo weeks of planning. Even minor shifts in understanding could give an army the edge decades later. Religious consequences rippled too. Churches and clerics noticed the human cost and the role of faith and courage. Some used the victory as proof of divine favor. Others preached humility, reminding their congregations that pride often led to disaster. Political and religious leaders intertwined interpretations, sometimes to justify future decisions, sometimes to comfort populations shaken by the sheer scale of the conflict. Political consequences were no less significant. Borders redrawn in the aftermath created new powers and weakened old ones. Treaties inspired by the battle's outcome reshaped alliances. Kings and emperors recalculated threats, some turning inward to consolidate power, others striking outward to claim advantage while the memory of victory was fresh. Every decision echoed with the quiet understanding that a single day could upend months, even years of diplomacy. Seeds for future conflicts were planted, often unintentionally. Rivalries that had lain dormant surfaced again. Ambitions stoked by success or frustration grew into larger disputes. Generations later, leaders and armies would look back at the battle, studying it, learning from it, and sometimes repeating mistakes that seemed obvious in hindsight. History, after all, has a tendency to recycle lessons in new forms. Even ordinary soldiers carried influence forward. Veterans told stories, taught younger recruits, and passed down insights about courage, fear, and survival. They didn't necessarily know they were shaping the next generation of military minds, but in quiet ways they did. Small human experiences often ripple farther than we expect. The geography of war itself changed in people's minds. Hills, rivers, forests, and open plains were no longer just scenery. Commanders considered terrain in ways inspired by what they had observed here. Defensive positions were planned with previous mistakes in mind. Opportunities were calculated with care. Every inch of land held potential advantage or danger. Religion, politics, and war intertwined more tightly. Leaders realized that inspiring soldiers often required belief, divine or national. Clerics reinforced morale, and political rhetoric shaped public perception.
Battles don't just end on the field, they echo. Stories grow, sometimes taller than the truth, twisting like vines over time. People tell tales to inspire, to warn, or just to entertain. And slowly, those stories become history, or at least what we call history. Winners are remembered first, statues go up, songs are written, and speeches praise courage, strategy, and brilliance. Flags are painted in bright colors, and victories become symbols of national pride. A general might be celebrated as genius, even if half the luck that day had little to do with skill. People forget small mistakes, or at least they don't mention them in polite conversation. Losers, meanwhile, fade differently. Some are vilified, labeled cowardly or foolish. Others are quietly admired for bravery and defeat, though that admiration rarely makes it into official records. Names can vanish from maps or linger only as footnotes in dusty books.
Yet those who lost often carried lessons that shaped future battles, even if the world didn't notice at the time. Stories change over decades. A minor act of bravery can become legendary. A mistake might be glossed over or turned into a moral lesson. One soldier's anecdote, "I tripped over a cannon and accidentally scared the enemy," might be repeated as a cunning maneuver that turned the tide of battle. Truth bends, and memory fills in gaps with what sounds good, dramatic, or inspiring. Textbooks, of course, love certainty. They prefer clear winners, clear losers, and tidy causes and effects. Reality is rarely tidy. Textbooks often skip hesitation, miscommunication, and sheer chance. They present straight lines where the battlefield was chaotic, noisy, and unpredictable. Sometimes students imagine battles as neat diagrams, when in fact, people ran, tripped, shouted, and improvised every step of the way. Even famous speeches can mislead. Leaders might embellish outcomes to justify decisions or inspire morale. Chroniclers might exaggerate numbers of soldiers, casualties, or victories, and readers, generations later, might take it all at face value. History becomes a mix of fact, interpretation, and narrative, and often the narrative is easier to remember than the messy truth. Legends thrive in that space. A heroic charge might become the decisive moment of the century, even if it lasted 3 minutes and involved mostly confusion. An enemy general might be demonized or glorified depending on who told the story. Facts and fiction intertwine, and eventually the line between them becomes very thin. Even everyday people contribute. Letters, diaries, and songs pass along details that never make it into official accounts. Sometimes those personal stories contradict the official version. A soldier's sketch of the battlefield might show panic rather than precision. A widow's recollection might reveal heroism that historians ignored. These voices remind us that history is lived, not just recorded. Humor also shapes memory. People exaggerate mistakes to make stories entertaining. A misfired cannon becomes a dramatic event. A clumsy stumble might be retold as clever strategy. These small distortions humanize history, giving it flavor and accessibility, even if accuracy suffers. Memory, legend, and textbooks collide. Winners are praised, losers minimized. Heroes are elevated, mistakes downplayed. But underneath, the truth persists. Chaos ruled the day. Men acted bravely, foolishly, and unpredictably. Decisions mattered, yes, but so did luck, confusion, and human error. The legendary charge may have been part strategy, part accident, part stubbornness, and part story told afterward to make sense of it all. Over time, history also reveals patterns. Strategists study victories and failures, looking for lessons buried in chaos. Scholars separate myth from fact, trying to understand what really happened. Yet even they must admit, sometimes myth teaches as much as truth. Stories influence future choices, inspire armies, and shape national identity, whether they are entirely accurate or not. The line between legend and truth is thin. One soldier's survival might become symbolic of an entire army's spirit. A lost battle might inspire future victories, remembered as a lesson in humility and preparation. Heroism, error, and chance all merge in memory, leaving a tapestry that is part fact, part human imagination. And so, when Europe remembers this battle, it doesn't just remember numbers, maps, or strategies. It remembers stories. Some accurate, some embellished, some accidental, and some invented entirely. But all of them, in their own way, shape how people understand courage, failure, and history itself. We like neat stories. We like heroes and villains. But the real story, messy and human, is always more interesting. Soldiers tripped, generals hesitated, orders were misread, luck intervened, and somehow, from that chaos, history was written. The truth, the legend, and the human experience all mixed together, reminding us that memory is never neutral, and every account carries the fingerprints of those who tell it. Even now, centuries later, when maps, textbooks, and museums recount the battle, the echoes of human mistakes, courage, and absurdity linger. Stories grew over time, reshaping understanding. They teach, entertain, warn, and inspire. And beneath it all, the thin line between legend and truth whispers that history is as much about humans as it is about events. Maps are funny things. On paper, lines are simple, neat, and unchanging. In reality, those lines are alive, shifting slowly with human ambition, mistakes, and luck. Before the battle, Europe looked one way, borders drawn by treaties, marriages, and wars long past. Afterward, it looked different, even if the changes weren't obvious at first glance. Some kingdoms had gained land, others had lost it. Rivers, hills, and mountains now marked edges differently than they had a month ago. Cartographers rushed to update maps, quills scratching over parchment, ink sometimes spilling in their haste. Each map was a little snapshot of chaos distilled into something that made sense on paper, sort of. Cultural shifts followed quietly, like a shadow stretching across towns and villages. Soldiers brought back stories, habits, and languages from places they had passed through. Merchants adjusted trade routes, introducing goods and ideas that had never traveled before. Music, dress, and cuisine subtly changed as people adapted to the aftermath. Even festivals shifted to reflect new heroes and new memories of victory and defeat. Art and literature absorbed the battle too. Writers dramatized events, sometimes faithfully, sometimes not. Painters captured scenes of bravery, despair, or absurdity. Sculptors carved faces into stone, immortalizing generals, soldiers, and symbolic figures. Every medium contributed to memory, helping culture shift in ways that were emotional, visual, and lasting. Historians call this battle a turning point for good reason. It wasn't just the military outcome, though that alone was huge. Borders had moved, rulers had changed, and alliances were rethought. The balance of power in Europe had shifted, and no single map, treaty, or army could return it to what it had been. Even decades later, scholars trace new developments back to that one day, recognizing its quiet but irreversible effect. Economics played a role in the shift too. Trade hubs expanded or contracted depending on which side controlled roads and rivers. Taxation changed. Supply lines and armies now moved differently because of lessons learned. Even small villages felt the impact. Who to sell to, where to ship grain, or which town was safe became questions influenced by the battle's aftermath. Religion, politics, and culture intertwined. Clerics wrote sermons referencing the battle, sometimes framing it as divine will, sometimes warning against pride. Political leaders adjusted policies based on what had happened, seeking stability or advantage. Ordinary people absorbed these influences without realizing it, adopting new beliefs, habits, and ways of interpreting authority. The turning point wasn't always obvious to those living through it. A farmer plowed his field, a merchant sold cloth, children played, yet all of them were influenced by history unfolding beneath their feet. The battle's effects rippled through daily life, quietly altering routines, expectations, and even dreams. Sometimes the most permanent change is invisible. Even famous speeches can mislead. Leaders might embellish outcomes to justify decisions or inspire morale. Chroniclers might exaggerate numbers of soldiers, casualties, or victories, and readers, generations later, might take it all at face value. History becomes a mix of fact, interpretation, and narrative, and often the narrative is easier to remember than the messy truth. Legends thrive in that space. A heroic charge might become the decisive moment of the century, even if it lasted 3 minutes and involved mostly confusion. An enemy general might be demonized or glorified depending on who told the story. Facts and fiction intertwine, and eventually the line between them becomes very thin. Even everyday people contribute. Letters, diaries, and songs.
History often feels like something distant. Dusty books, old maps, and faded portraits.
But sometimes it hits closer than we think. Power, ambition, and consequence all converged on one day, on one field, and the ripples from that day are still felt in Europe today. Power is a strange thing. On the battlefield, it's horses, cannons, and soldiers. Off the field, it's treaties, alliances, and negotiations. But in both cases, ambition drives it. Kings, generals, and nobles wanted more than land. They wanted influence, security, and sometimes just the satisfaction of being right. Ambition is timeless, and ambition often carries consequences, sometimes obvious, sometimes subtle, sometimes stretching centuries into the future. One day can change everything. That day, decisions were made, mistakes happened, and chance intervened. Soldiers acted, commanders planned, and luck decided where lines held or broke. The consequences weren't just immediate. Borders shifted, rulers changed, and alliances were tested. And those decisions, recorded in letters, maps, and stories, shaped Europe for generations. One field, one day, and yet the echo was massive. Modern Europe still carries traces of that moment. Borders, even if they have moved again, were influenced by what happened. Alliances, habits, and attitudes toward war were altered. Military tactics, strategies, and lessons learned continue to influence planning even centuries later. And culturally, stories of heroism, human error, and resilience remain part of the collective memory. They shape identity, pride, and caution in ways that textbooks sometimes fail to capture. Even now, when we walk through Europe, through cities, countrysides, and towns, we are walking on land marked by history. Roads that once carried troops now carry merchants. Fields that were campgrounds are plowed and planted. Rivers that witnessed armies moving quietly continue their course. Nature endured, patient as ever, but humans adapted, remembered, and preserved lessons in ways both subtle and permanent. Ambition isn't only military or political, it's cultural too. Stories, songs, and art inspired by that day continue to remind people of courage, folly, and resilience. Writers dramatized events, artists painted heroes and tragedies. Ordinary people passed down anecdotes in letters, songs, and conversation. Every retelling added nuance, humor, or exaggeration, keeping memory alive and human. Consequences are rarely simple. Victory brings opportunity, but also responsibility. Defeat brings shame, but can also teach lessons. Borders can shift, but people adapt. Generations inherit both advantages and burdens. One choice on a field, where to place troops, when to advance, when to retreat, can ripple through time, affecting lives never imagined. Even humor played its part. Soldiers joked about muddy boots, lost helmets, or clumsy horses. Victories were celebrated with small, absurd stories. Defeats were softened with sarcastic remarks or ironic songs. These little touches of humanity remind us that history isn't only about strategy or power, it's also about people, feelings, and survival. Modern Europe reflects this quietly. Cities, borders, and institutions carry echoes of the past. Some influences are obvious: maps, treaties, military doctrines. Others are subtle: cultural practices, storytelling traditions, or even humor that celebrates resilience. And all of it started with decisions made in the moment, under pressure, with uncertainty pressing from every side. Time also teaches patience. While one day can change much, understanding its full impact takes decades, sometimes centuries. Historians, scholars, and ordinary citizens all interpret the past differently. What seems decisive now may only be a ripple in the bigger story. And yet, the significance of that day continues to be felt, quietly shaping choices, memory, and identity. The calm, thoughtful pacing of history is instructive. Change is rarely instant. The battlefield may have been chaotic, but its effects unfolded gradually. Borders, treaties, alliances, economies, and culture all adapted over time. People adjusted, learned, and passed down experiences. The full weight of a single day's decisions becomes clear only when viewed across generations. History isn't neat, but it endures. Power and ambition collide. Consequences spread far beyond those who lived them. Europe, modern and complex, still carries the marks. Lessons learned, mistakes remembered, and stories told continue to influence policy, culture, and identity. And sometimes, in quiet moments, walking through an old town, reading a letter, or hearing a song, the echo of that day is visible, almost tangible. One day, one battlefield, one moment of human decision, it all continues to resonate. The courage, folly, chance, and ambition from that day shaped not just Europe then, but Europe now. Modern cities, borders, and cultures are partly the product of choices made under pressure, in dust and smoke, by humans doing their best in chaos. And the lesson is simple, if quiet. History is human. Power, ambition, and consequence intertwine, and one day can ripple through centuries. Modern Europe, in all its complexity, carries that truth, reminding us that the past is never gone. It lives on in maps, borders, culture, and memory. And sometimes, when we pause to look, we can feel it quietly, underfoot and in the air around us. History is permanent, patient, and human. And one day, like the one we've walked through, proves it.
Now, as we settle into the calm, let's take a soft look back at everything we've walked through. No dramatic fanfare, no urgent rush, just a slow, steady pause to remember. The battles, the maps, the shifting borders, the victories, the mistakes. All of it belongs to history. And history, in its own way, slowly fades into reflection. We've seen power and ambition, courage and error, human determination and human fragility. Soldiers marched, families waited, rulers calculated, and ordinary people adapted. The echoes of one day stretched into decades, shaping culture, borders, and memory. And yet, now, in this moment, it's okay to let those echoes soften, like music fading after a song ends. The battlefield we imagined, the maps we traced in our minds, the stories we heard, they are part of the past. They are part of a world that continues to live in memory, letters, songs, and even humor. Soldiers joked, commanders sighed, and ordinary people endured. All of it reminds us that history is human, and human things, no matter how significant, eventually find quiet. Even Europe, forever changed by those events, has moved on. Borders shift again, alliances evolve, generations rise and fall. What once seemed urgent now becomes context, a lesson tucked into daily life. The weight of decisions, the roar of armies, the drama of ambition, all of it softens in the calm of time. We can take a moment to breathe with that calm. Imagine the fields today, grass growing over worn paths, rivers reflecting the sky, birds moving freely across the same hills where chaos once ruled. Even in the past, the land held patience, and it continues to hold it. Quiet, steady, enduring. We can match that pace in our own minds. Stories, too, fade gently. Exaggerated victories, heroic charges, mistakes, and mishaps, they still exist, but they become part of the broader pattern of life. The human side of history, laughter intense, whispered fears, letters sent home, muddy boots forgotten in the rain, remains. These small details outlast noise and drama, and they are often the ones that linger quietly in our imagination. We can also let our thoughts drift to the people who lived it all. Soldiers resting, families tending their homes, civilians going about their days, even those who never returned. They carried hope, fear, fatigue, and humor. They lived ordinary lives caught up in extraordinary events. And just as they moved forward after the battle, we can move gently through our reflections now, letting the past settle into stillness. History does not demand constant attention.
it whispers. Its lessons are subtle. Borders, treaties, and maps are important, but so are human reactions. Courage, error, resilience, patience. We can carry these quietly in our thoughts, appreciating without urgency, remembering without stress. It's a slow, calm process, like walking through a familiar forest at dusk, noticing details but letting the world breathe. Even humor finds its place here. The small absurdities, the muddy boots, the misfired cannons, the clumsy horses, soften memory. They remind us that humans, even in serious moments, are not perfect. Mistakes are made. Laughter helps survive. And now we can smile gently at these stories, letting them fade into calm reflection rather than excitement. As the day's events stretch into quiet, the vast span of time envelops us. Generations have risen and fallen, carrying lessons forward, sometimes forgetting, sometimes remembering. The echoes of history ripple softly, gentle as waves lapping at a shore. We can follow them slowly, noticing patterns without rushing, acknowledging consequences without panic. Breathing slowly, we can imagine Europe resting now. Fields, towns, rivers, and forests all find a steady rhythm. The human stories, though long past, rest alongside them in memory. Soldiers sleep, families recover, leaders plan no more for that day. Time has taken what was urgent and let it become context. Peace, patience, and reflection dominate the landscape. And so, we too can rest with it. Let the stories, lessons, humor, and reflection settle gently in our minds. Let the human side of history, the courage, the mistakes, the absurdities, soften into quiet acknowledgement. We don't need to hold tension or excitement. We can let the past be, calmly and gently as we move toward our own rest. Even memory, powerful as it is, finds its quiet. The roar of battle is replaced by whispers. Maps, treaties, and borders no longer demand immediate action. Stories remain, but they settle into their place. The rhythm of life resumes, and we, along with history, can breathe, slow down, and rest. So, as you close your eyes, imagine the fields, the hills, and the rivers. Imagine soldiers resting, families smiling quietly, and nature continuing its patient rhythm. Let history fade softly in your mind. Let lessons, laughter, and memory become gentle companions rather than urgent alarms. In this calm, thoughtful silence, we can honor what happened, remember gently, and let ourselves rest. The battlefield, Europe, and history itself have found quiet. And now we can too.